Welcome to the Reddit mic. So for this deep dive, our mission is to explore incredibly intricate, often unexpected narratives. They all started as pleas for advice on Reddit.
Right.
And they reveal some surprising things about family dynamics, personal boundaries, and, well, the long-term consequences of choices.
And that's what we're looking at, isn't it? What happens when people essentially lay bare their lives online?
Yeah.
And how that collective wisdom, or sometimes, the chaos of the internet, actually plays a role in how things unfold.
Yeah.
We'll examine the unexpected turns, the sort of underlying psychological currents in each story, see what we can learn.
Okay, let's unpack this first one then. It kicks off with a really, really unusual request. We've got a 35-year-old guy, the original poster, or OOP. He's grappling with his 58-year-old mother's new fiancé.
Okay.
And here's the twist. The fiancé is only 24.
Wow, okay. That's a gap.
Right. And he actually wants the OOP and his siblings, they're 30 and 28, to call him Dad.
Dad.
Yeah.
To people older than him.
Exactly. An unexpected development, to say the least.
What's particularly striking about this fiancé, Phil, is his stated ambition.
Huh.
He says he wants to meet a girl, get married, and have a family.
Okay.
And this desire seems to fuel some pretty peculiar behavior. Like he calls the adult children sport, kid, or little buddy.
Oh, wow.
He apparently tried princess on the sister once, but quickly dropped that one.
I can imagine. So it gets even more intense, right? Phil calls the OP over for a man-to-man talk and reveals this long-held dream he has of raising a son. He says, he acknowledges he can't replace their deceased father, but says it would mean the world if he could just be called Dad.
Wow. That is quite a demand. What do you think is really driving that? I mean, given the context.
Well, when the OOP confronted his mother about it, she admitted it made Phil very upset and depressed. She described it as, and this is a quote, how he proves to himself he's a man.
Oof. Okay.
The OOP, understandably found this pretty kooky, offensive even. He basically said it wasn't his job to certify what's between his legs.
Which is a fair point. It sounds like Phil's projecting some major insecurities onto this new family, seeking validation through a title rather than, well, earning respect.
Totally. And the mother's perspective adds another layer here.
How so?
She apparently let slip plans for IVF. She wants more kids, plural.
At 58, with a 24-year-old.
Yep. Saying she's not ready to give up on being a mom just yet, and citing deep-seated trauma and fears about the family breaking apart.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack.
Imagine. A 58-year-old woman planning for kids when her eldest is 35. The OOP and his brother even pointed out, the basic math, these kids wouldn't finish college before she turned 80.
Right. And this whole situation, especially that 34-year age gap, it drew really strong reactions online. Commenters called it gross, suggested both Phil and the mother might be, well, mentally unwell.
Yeah, I saw some of that.
Some even labeled the mother a predator for dating, quote, a vulnerable, insecure young man, and not stopping his delusions.
It really feels like the mother's intense need not to give up mothering might be driving her acceptance of Phil's really bizarre behavior.
It seems plausible. So the resolution of this part of the story is quite a ride.
Oh.
Apparently, Phil's Lions Club membership was somehow impacted after the post went viral.
Really?
Not entirely clear, but it led to him making these cryptic posts online about the duty of fatherhood bestowed on all men at birth.
Okay.
Ultimately, the wedding got called off. Phil's own family stepped in, demanded he date people his own age. They revealed he's actually very insecure around girls his own age, and apparently has never been able to talk to them.
Oh, okay. That sheds some light. And then, in this truly bizarre twist, Phil's Dungeons & Dragons friends, his D&D buddies, started calling the OOP and his brother, well, a crude nickname, something like the MILF Hunter.
No.
Seriously?
Seriously, it's just wilder than fiction, honestly.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a story.
Right. Okay, so for our second deep dive, we're shifting gears a bit. We're plunging into the world of a 23-year-old woman, the OOP here, who is called stupid by her future mother-in-law.
Oh, dear.
And the reason? Simply because she loves asking questions.
Okay, tell me more. This OOP describes herself as a learner, right? She's genuinely embracing curiosity, apparently inspired by an online quote, only stupid people pretend to know everything. Don't pretend, just ask.
I like that.
Me too. It's great. She even keeps a notes app for questions like, how does the sun work? Or do snails have shells? It's actually really charming.
It is. But the pivotal moment happens at a family barbecue. She overhears her Mill mocking her, like using high-pitched voices and making fun of her questions.
That's awful.
And her fiancé, John, is apparently laughing along.
Oh, no. Not the fiancé laughing, too.
Exactly. When a sister-in-law tries to smooth it over, saying the questioning is cute, the ML just snaps back. It's not cute. She's just stupid.
Wow. Just brutal. Overhearing that from your future mother-in-law, that must have been absolutely heartbreaking.
Totally.
That kind of public mockery, especially from someone who's supposed to become family, it often points to something deeper, doesn't it? And crucially, what was John's role in all this? Besides laughing along.
Well, when the OOP confronts John later, he first tries to brush it off as just a joke.
Of course he does.
And then he even accuses her of eavesdropping. Classic deflection, right?
That's book.
He does eventually admit his mother had made similar comments before, and he claims he tries to defend her, but the OOP just doesn't believe him.
I wouldn't either, frankly. Yeah. That's a huge betrayal of trust. It's emotional gaslighting, really. His failure to stand up for her, dismissing her feelings, it's often the breaking point, isn't it? So what did she do? She decided she couldn't be with someone who wouldn't stand up for her, couldn't marry into a family that clearly thought so little of her.
Good for her.
And she delivered this truly powerful exit. Took off her engagement ring, told John, his behavior's a joke and I can't be the punchline. And then she moved out.
Wow. That's fantastic. Really strong.
That'd be badass.
What's truly fascinating here, though, is the resolution. The shift in power. 3 months later, the OOP is absolutely thriving.
How so?
She's got her own apartment. She's enrolled in CS50 by Harvard X, which is, a pretty serious and well-respected computer science course.
Right, yeah.
And she's planning to adopt a kitten, just living her best life.
Love it. And the ex, John.
Meanwhile, John hadn't even told his family they'd broken up.
Seriously? After 3 months?
Yep. And get this, his own brothers are now mocking him. They're giving him grief for letting a good one go and for not defending her in the first place.
Oh, the irony.
It's a perfect illustration, isn't it? Living well truly is the best revenge.
Absolutely. And the comments online were just full of praise for her shiny spine, as they put it, and her commitment to curiosity. People pointing out that, curiosity is a sign of intelligence, not stupidity. It's just a powerful reminder that self-worth has to come first.
Definitely. A really empowering story, actually.
Okay, moving on to the next story. Enter a relationship that initially seemed maybe just imbalanced, but it spirals into this truly shocking tale of deception.
Okay.
We have a 37-year-old man, the OOP. For 17 years, he's been the sole provider and the primary caregiver for his wife and their 4 children.
17 years. Sole provider and primary caregiver. That's intense.
Right. So the initial spark, the thing that made him post, was his wife wanting a 2-week vacation with her friends.
Okay, fair enough.
Paid for by him, naturally. And it directly overlapped with his rare pre-planned trip with his brother.
There's a conflict.
Yeah. He's exhausted. He feels, quite rightly, that their roles are far from equal.
I can imagine. What did his daily routine look like?
It's astounding, he described it. Up at 5 a.m., walks the dogs, prepares the kids' lunches, heads off to a physically demanding job. Gets home around 7 p.m., makes dinner, helps with homework, does the whole bedtime routine, then does the dishes.
Wow.
He pays for absolutely everything. Mortgage, bills, groceries, even a monthly cleaning lady.
And the wife. What were her contributions?
Well, according to him, she did the laundry, but he folded it. She gave the dogs their pre-made food, which he prepared. And she enjoyed hobbies and social outings.
That does sound incredibly unbalanced. How did it even get to that point over 17 years? That's a long time.
Well, he revealed this pattern. His wife stopped working due to morning sickness with their first child. Okay, understandable.
Right.
But then she got pregnant with subsequent children each time she was pressured to return to work.
Oh, that sounds convenient or strategic.
Exactly. Even after he had a vasectomy, a 4th child was conceived, which, raised some serious suspicions for him later on.
I bet it did.
He also described her becoming insanely depressed after her mother, who used to help with childcare, left. He'd come home from work to a screaming baby, and apparently nothing done around the house.
That's tough.
And he mentioned she could be handsy during arguments, physically trying to drag him out of bed if he tried to sleep separately.
Okay, that's crossing a line into physical intimidation. This pattern is quite concerning. Coercive behavior, manipulation.
Yeah. And the first update he posted really marked a turning point, didn't it?
It did. He takes a sick day, right?
Right. He's genuinely ill. And his wife's reaction is just chilling. But we need the money. You don't look that bad.
Wow. Zero empathy.
None. So he confronts her about their completely unequal duties. He lists everything he does. She, in turn, lists her minimal tasks.
How did that go down?
Not well. She eventually stormed off, again, physically trying to remove him from the bed when he wanted space, forcing him to sleep on the couch.
This whole situation, It really is that boiling frog analogy people mention in the comments, isn't it? Just this slow, insidious escalation of abuse and manipulation that he maybe didn't fully see until he was pushed right to his breaking point.
Exactly. And then came the truly shocking revelations. He found out the reason his wife could suddenly afford to go on that trip despite his objections. She'd funded it with money from an OnlyFans account.
Whoa, okay. Didn't see that coming.
Neither did he, and the plot thickened even more. His eldest son, while taking the dogs out, accidentally walked in on his mother making content in the living room.
Oh my God, the poor kid.
Right, and then she blackmails her own son, tells him OOP isn't making enough money, she's doing OnlyFans to help out, and that telling OOP would ruin our marriage and could lead us to divorce.
Blackmailing her son, that's just next level awful.
It's unbelievable.
And the most devastating revelation, the thing that sort of connects all these threads of deception that came with the paternity test.
Yeah. The results came back. His son is his.
Okay.
But his 3 daughters are not.
Oh my God. 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4. The shock of this news was so profound, the OOP actually suffered a heart attack.
I can't even imagine that level of betrayal for so long.
Yeah.
It's staggering. What about the in-laws?
His in-laws, the FAL and MIL, when they found out the truth, were apparently incredibly supportive of him.
Really?
Yeah. His father-in-law was furious with his daughter. The mother-in-law was devastated, apologized profusely to the OOP. The wife, completely exposed, was forced to move out and rent her own place.
Wow. At least he had some support there. That's something.
Definitely. The story ends with the OOP recovering physically. The house apparently feels much calmer, but emotionally, it's a complex mix. Anger, humiliation, embarrassment, but also, strangely, relief.
Relief.
Yeah, relief that the truth is out. Maybe he said he doesn't regret his girls. Obviously, he loves them. But the betrayal, it clearly stings deeply.
Understandably. What a devastating story. Though you mentioned some commenters are skeptical.
Yeah, this incredibly dramatic narrative did lead some people to feel it read like incel bait or maybe a soap opera because there were just so many dramatic elements packed into one story. It's hard to verify, of course.
True. Online stories always come with that caveat.
Yeah.
But assuming it's true, it's just a monumental level of deception.
It really is. All right, moving on to the next story. It presents a father's, let's say, unique perspective on a fractured relationship, his daughter trying to reconcile after decades, actually. And the public reaction was, well, highly polarized.
Where are we getting this from?
Our sources for this deep dive come from a pretty compelling Reddit update series. The post title gives you a flavor. New update. My daughter just contacted me after 17 years asking if I want to meet my granddaughter. AI Tef for telling her that I don't care about her or her daughter and to never contact me again.
Wow, okay. Straight to the point.
Pretty much.
So our mission today is to unpack this really personal account. We'll explore the motivations, the unexpected turns, and maybe what it means for you, the listener, as you navigate the tricky relationships in your own life.
That's good.
All right, let's open this up. So our journey here starts with the original poster, the OOP. He's a man in his 60s, retired now.
And his life, even before the daughter sounds pretty isolated. He tells us his parents have passed away, his brother died tragically just a couple of years back.
He actually says he's waiting for my turn.
Yeah, and that he only has his dog and his sister left. It paints this picture of, well, profound isolation, really.
Definitely. So how did this estrangement even start? That's the core, right?
Absolutely. It goes back 17 years. His daughter was 15. His marriage was falling apart.
Okay.
And he openly admits he had an affair. It was with a coworker, someone he says was in an abusive relationship.
Right. He frames it very specifically.
He does. He says the affair gave her an out, that he helped her file for divorce from her husband, who actually ended up going to jail.
But the affair itself?
He says it went nowhere. They called it off pretty quickly after.
But the damage was done. Immense fallout, wasn't it?
Huge. His ex-wife found out. Understandably, she lashed out. And according to him, she said a lot of horrible things about me to our daughter.
And that's when the daughter cut him off.
Completely vowed never to speak to him again. He describes that moment as the most painful thing anyone had ever said to me.
Did he try to fix it?
He says he tried to reconnect for about a year. Just a year. Then he gave up
Gave up.
and moved states a year later. He even mentions hoping his ex-wife's remarriage might, soften things, maybe lead her to encourage the daughter to reach out.
But it never happened.
Never happened, which really brings up that question, doesn't it?
What happens after that long?
Exactly. What happens when one person gives up after a year and the other stays silent for nearly 2 decades?
It's such a long time. Does that kind of silence just kill the possibility of reconciliation? Or does it just make it incredibly difficult?
It certainly creates a huge chasm, a space where, any connection just withers away. Expectations change completely.
Okay, so fast forward. Hours before he posts on Reddit.
Out of the blue, his daughter calls.
After 17 years.
Yep. He knew her voice instantly, but he claims he felt nothing.
Nothing? No anger? No sadness?
No happiness, no sadness, just indifference, he wrote.
Wow.
She was crying on the phone. They talked a bit, caught up. She told him she's married, has a 12-year-old daughter.
A granddaughter he never knew about.
Exactly. And she apologized for cutting him off, said her mom felt guilty and had encouraged her to reconnect.
So it wasn't entirely her own initiative, maybe?
It sounds like her mom played a role, yeah. And crucially, she said she really wanted me to meet her daughter and that the granddaughter was constantly asking about granddaddy.
Okay, that's a huge olive branch. How did he respond?
This is the chilling part. He told her, quote, "I don't care about her or her daughter and to never contact me again." And then he hung up.
Just like that. And then he posted online asking if he was the asshole.
You got it. And the Reddit community, they reacted immediately, overwhelmingly negative.
I can imagine. That subreddit, AITH, they don't hold back.
Yeah.
So a classic YTA, you're the asshole verdict.
Absolutely. Strong language, very clear judgment initially.
But then things took a turn,
It was
right?
a really sharp turn. The very next day, OOP posts an update.
What did he say?
He claimed he was extremely drunk the night before, said his comments were not the best.
The I was drunk excuse. How did they go down later?
Well, let's just say it became a major point of contention. People questioned how genuine it was, especially given what happened next.
Which was?
He decided to call his daughter back and didn't expect her to pick up, he says, but she did, instantly. He apologized for what he'd said, but incredibly, she told him there was no need to apologize.
She did, after he said he didn't care about her or her child.
Yep, started crying again, and then he sent her a link to his Reddit post.
Wait, he sent her the post where everyone's calling him an asshole?
He did, acknowledging that, quote, thousands said he was the AH.
That is the dynamic. She's trying so hard to bridge this gap, even absorbing his cruelty and, wow, his public shaming almost.
It's intense, isn't it?
And then the invitation. This seems almost unbelievable after that first call.
Right. OOP invited his daughter, her husband, and the granddaughter to his house.
Seriously.
Yes. Told her they could come anytime in the next 4 months, because after that, he was moving out of the country.
Moving where?
With his sister and dog to live in his parents' old farmhouse somewhere else. He even said they could stay for multiple days. His house was big enough.
And did she agree?
She said they'd visit by the end of the next week.
Okay, so there's hope again. Maybe. Let's fast forward. September 2024, the next update.
His second and, he says, final update. He confirms he's moved to the farmland, describes it as peaceful and scenic.
And the visit. Did it happen?
It did. She came with her husband and daughter before he left the country.
How'd it go?
He described it as really nice seeing my granddaughter, said she looked a lot like her mom, and he stated they had a good time during the week they stayed.
A whole week? That sounds positive, like maybe things were turning around.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? A week together having a good time.
But there's always a but in this story, it seems.
There is. He then delivers another crushing blow. He took his daughter aside privately.
Oh, no.
And told her he had no interest in being a grandfather. Said he just didn't have strong emotions for it.
After letting them visit for a week. After seeing his granddaughter.
Exactly. Unsurprisingly, he notes his daughter did cry a lot after I said those words.
I can't even imagine. Why? Why invite them, let them stay, maybe let the granddaughter get attached, only to say that?
That's the question everyone was asking. The daughter apparently wanted to rekindle our relationship, but he told her, it's just too late now.
Just too late.
He did say she's free to visit him in the farmland anytime, but adds he doubts she will.
Have they spoken since?
No calls, no texts. Neither has reached out. He concludes the whole thing by saying, the week she stayed over at my place before I left the country was a final goodbye for us.
Wow. A final goodbye disguised as a reunion. That's incredibly harsh.
It's a lot to process.
So this complex, really contradictory story, it must have just set Reddit on fire. What did people make of it all?
Oh, the opinions are all over the place. Fascinating, really, but you can kind of group them.
Okay.
One dominant perspective, maybe the loudest initially, was that OOP is just an unforgivable villain, pure selfishness.
Yeah, I could see that. Comments calling him a deadbeat, selfish father, a cheater.
Exactly. Terrible human being, even sociopath got thrown around. People really zeroed in on him blaming his daughter, a child at the time, for his bad adult decisions.
And the fact he only tried to reconnect for 1 whole year, that came up a lot.
A lot. People thought he just gave up on her so easily. And that final visit, inviting them just to reject them, that was seen as incredibly cruel.
Sick, selfish evil, some said, like he did it on purpose to hurt her.
Or to get back at her for the 17 years of no contact. Some even suggested he might have been secretly relieved to be cut off initially, just wanted to play sad victim.
What about the affair story, the rescue narrative?
Huge criticism there, too. People argued he took advantage of his coworkers' vulnerability, saying things like, you can help an abuse victim without dating them or having sex with them.
Makes sense. And the drunk excuse.
Widely dismissed. People felt his initial words were too clear, too specific. The sentiment that humans can justify literally anything to ourselves.
Okay, so that's the villain perspective. But you said there was a counter narrative.
Yes, a significant one. That the OOP isn't necessarily evil, but perhaps deeply broken, maybe severely depressed.
Oh, so...
Commenters pointed to his own words, waiting for my turn, his general apathy. They described him as maybe catatonically depressed, empty, a feelings void.
Like he's killed off his emotions to avoid more pain.
Precisely, suggesting his detachment wasn't malice, but numbness. Someone argued, depression makes you kind of an asshole because empathy just becomes too challenging.
So that final rejection, while still awful, might stem from an inability to feel rather than a desire to hurt.
That was the argument. And this view also brought the daughter's actions into focus.
Her role in the 17 years of silence.
Exactly. Many pointed out she chose to cut contact for 17 years and maintained it. The argument was actions have consequences.
That after so long, he genuinely moved on. She was essentially a stranger showing up.
Yeah. Some felt it was unreasonable for her to expect him to just instantly switch gears and rekindle this long-dead relationship, especially since her reaching out seemed prompted by her mom's guilt or her own daughter's questions.
Not necessarily her own deep need for him specifically.
That was a point some raised. And his honesty, however brutal...
Some saw it as kind.
In a way. The kindest thing he could have done, one commenter said. Immediate pain, yes, but no false hope. Allows her to mourn it and move on.
And his own losses. Yeah. Parents, brother.
People factored that in, too, suggesting maybe he's just irreparably broken by everything he's been through.
So, villain or broken man? It's complex. What does this all mean for us, for you listening?
Well, this deep dive isn't just about judging this one guy, is it?
No, it's a stark reminder of a few things, I think. First, the sheer weight of choices.
Definitely. How decisions made in really charged moments like infidelity, divorce, they ripple out for decades. They shape futures in ways you can't foresee.
And the nuance of estrangement. It's rarely simple, is it?
Almost never one-sided. The person who cuts contact, the person who's cut off, both often contribute to that prolonged silence. And trying to bridge that gap after so long, incredibly complex.
Then there's the mask of apathy.
Yeah, this story is a powerful illustration of how severe emotional numbness, maybe depression, can look like cruelty, even if the intent isn't malicious.
It makes you question how we recognize deep emotional distress and what are the limits of responsibility when someone's mental health really impacts their ability to connect.
And finally, the nature of forgiveness and reconciliation.
The daughter offered it, right? She opened the door.
She did. But the father, maybe because of his internal state, just seemed incapable of walking through it. It challenges us, I think, to consider what genuine reconciliation actually requires from everyone involved.
It's a deeply human story, isn't it? Full of pain, regret, maybe a search for connection, even if it failed.
Absolutely. It forces us to confront some really uncomfortable truths about responsibility, about time, about how deep emotional wounds can run.
It really makes you wonder, when a relationship dies and it's buried for years like this one was, can you really resurrect it with just a phone call or a week-long visit?
Or does it need something more? A kind of transformation that maybe some people, for whatever reason, are just unwilling or maybe unable to go through. All right, moving on to the next story. It began with something that seems almost minor, like a food dislike, but it quickly revealed much, much deeper issues. Issues of control and incredible strength, too. You sent us a truly compelling stack of sources, basically a series of updates from a Reddit user posted online that took this, seemingly harmless conflict and just peeled back all the layers to show something far darker, a whole pattern.
Yeah, what's really fascinating here is how it starts. So relatable, right? Someone just really doesn't like mustard. But it illustrates so quickly the huge difference between like a simple preference and a really deep-seated issue of control, abuse, really. So our mission today is kind of follow this person's journey from, confusion and fear all the way to clarity, strength, and ultimately freedom.
Okay, let's get into the details then. What happened? Because when I first read this, the initial thing, the mustard, it seemed almost trivial. Our original poster, OP, she's a woman, early 30s. She thought her husband's obsession with her trying mustard was just kind of annoying, a weird quirk maybe. But then they're in the car one day, driving home, and things just took this terrifying turn. Over a plain hot dog, he apparently got furious, forcibly put mustard on her food, screamed at her, driving erratically, and then he actually said the word divorce for the first time. She was so scared, apparently, she secretly recorded his outburst on her phone, genuinely thought she might die right there in the car.
Wow, okay, so this immediately begs the question, doesn't it? Was it ever really about the mustard? A comment in the sources, pretty relevant, I thought, identified the core issue straight away. Just a fundamental lack of respect for her, no. And this wasn't new. The OP confirmed it herself, said it would usually take him at least 3 times to acknowledge when I say no, moo. And this extended, importantly, even to intimate moments. He'd relentlessly ask for blowjobs, apparently, even after she'd repeatedly said no. He'd even tried to, buy all this stuff to make me like it. Still pushing past that no.
Yeah, and here's where it gets, for me, really interesting as I was reading through the sources. She was financially independent, right? Had her own money. But she realized she'd completely lost herself in the relationship. Her friends, they were his friends. Her parents were gone. She felt utterly alone, isolated. So she actually compiled a list, all his worrying behaviors, and realized, yeah, the mustard incident, that was just the tip of the iceberg. She noted how their shared interests were basically just his interests: golf, camping, red wine, stuff she never really liked but sort of tried to embrace for him. Meanwhile, he just ignored her passions, things she actually cared about.
Expert, that tip of the iceberg thing, what does that tell us about how abuse like this often works?
Oh, that's such a critical observation because it's rarely just one big incident, right? It's usually this slow build, a pattern. It's a classic hallmark of what we call coercive control. These seemingly minor things like the mustard, they escalate, they normalize bigger and bigger boundary violations over time. And the isolation you mentioned, social, emotional, it's often a deliberate strategy. It's designed to wear down the victim support system, their sense of self, make them more dependent. So yeah, when shared interests become totally one-sided, that's another big red flag. It's about diminishing her identity, her space.
Right. And it makes leaving so incredibly difficult when you're that isolated, when you feel like you've lost yourself. Where do you even start? So she finally took a week off work. She went to get therapy specifically for domestic abuse and sexual assault, and that confirmed, yeah, this is a pattern. But then the sources say her husband found her, tracked her down in her hotel by following her from work. And she did this incredibly brave thing. She sat down with him, pointed right at the security camera in the hotel lobby, and told him flat out she'd press charges if he tried to hurt her. His response: just dismissed her fear about the car incident, minimized everything, asked her all this over one mistake. Oh, that disconnect. It's just chilling, isn't it? He had no grasp of her terror.
Completely missed the point. It's utterly chilling, you're right. And then, after she told him she was looking for a lawyer, he grabbed her wrist hard, only let go when she pointed to the camera again, which just confirmed for her how sensitive he was to any, quote, slight to his ego, anything that made him look bad publicly. And this is where she had that huge realization, that moment of clarity you mentioned. She wrote, normal people don't want to have sex with someone who has already said no. Normal people don't keep pushing and obsessing over food preferences. There's something seriously wrong with that man. That was her conclusion.
So even after she's clearly trying to leave, the manipulation didn't stop. It actually seemed to escalate. His mother got involved.
Triangulation.
Right. So OP gets a divorce lawyer, moves to a new place he doesn't know, goes fully remote for work, and his calls and texts just ramp up. Intense pressure. He wanted her at Thanksgiving with his family, begging her to stop being this way. Then he tells his mother this completely watered-down version of what happened, makes the OP sound like she's the crazy one, a neurotic control freak. And then his mother calls her, trying to get info about her lawyer, reminding her that lying in court was a crime. Is that kind of thing common? Involving the family like that, what does that do to someone psychologically?
Absolutely. It's a very common tactic, unfortunately. Post-separation abuse, the badgering involving family, spreading misinformation, it's all designed to maintain control even after the physical separation. The psychological impact is huge. It denies the victim peace, it undermines their reality, makes them doubt themselves, it keeps them entangled. His mother basically became like an extension of his control, trying to wear down the OP's resolve, isolate her even more. It really shows how deep these abusive patterns can run, sometimes involving the whole family system, consciously or not.
But then came the most shocking part of the story, later in the source updates. It really underscores just how severe this whole situation was. It was this specific incident. In December, it resulted in her being hospitalized and getting a protective order against him, a legal order to keep him away for her safety. She later clarified what actually happened, what the catalyst was. Her words were, "He raped me. That's the catalyst that resulted in me moving and our divorce moving along properly." And then she added this horrifying detail. "He was trying to impregnate me. He told me that."
It's devastating. And this brings up another really important and difficult question about the justice system. Because despite the rape, the hospitalization, the protective order, her ex-husband didn't serve any jail time. Instead, he was mandated to counseling, which, in their state, was considered a legally acceptable outcome. This, understandably, sparked a lot of discussion among the commenters on the original posts. People brought up the history of marital rape laws. I mean, it wasn't actually outlawed in all U.S. states until 1993, which is shocking when you think about it. And they talked about how hard it often is for prosecutors to get convictions in these cases, often leading to plea deals like mandatory counseling. It also just reflects a wider societal issue, doesn't it? Where rape within a relationship is sometimes still dismissed or minimized, women's rights not fully centered. So this case, sadly, it really illustrates how the legal system, even now, often struggles to deliver what feels like justice for intimate partner violence. Those societal biases are still there.
So yeah, when the legal system doesn't feel like it delivered full justice, what does that mean for someone trying to heal? What does that path look like? Because despite that outcome, her journey towards healing described in the sources is actually really inspiring. She's still in therapy, both individual and group, focusing on self-love, independence, not rushing into another relationship, and she's embraced new passions, like cooking, reveling in all the different flavors her, quote, boring ex-husband never appreciated. She made this great point, too. Slathering mustard on a $2 hot dog does not mean you have superior taste buds, which I thought was perfect.
That's fantastic. And her healing isn't just emotional, it's physical, too. She found huge benefits in yoga and Pilates, feeling physically stronger. And she described this profound emotional release during certain stretches, hip-opening ones, even crying sometimes as part of that process, letting go of stored trauma. And crucially, she's building a new support system, making real friends, as she put it, through a local women's club. They do things like embroidery, share snacks, just genuine connection. And she learned something really important about her anger, the intense rage she felt towards him. She realized that's actually a vital part of healing. Her therapist apparently told her, rage is you coming back to life, reclaiming yourself.
Wow, rage is you coming back to life. That's powerful. And her final words in the updates really captured that transformation, that reclaiming. She says she's alive, safe, free, devil, and unequivocally states she will never ever eat mustard again or be pushed into doing anything I said no to the first time. Full stop.
It's quite a journey. This deep dive, I think, it really shows us how those seemingly small moments, tiny bits of disrespect, can actually be huge red flags, how they can escalate into these severe patterns of control and abuse. And it just underscores the immense courage it takes. First, to recognize what's happening, and then to escape it, especially when it's someone you love, someone you built a life with.
Yeah, it really does. And it leaves us with maybe a provocative thought to end on.
Yeah.
How often do we, or maybe people we know, dismiss those more subtle controlling behaviors? Or maybe we push past someone's comfortable no in just everyday interactions without realizing the dangerous precedents we might be setting or witnessing. Think about the power of a clear no, a respected no, whether it's about something small like a food preference or a big personal boundary, or even just saying no to doing something you genuinely don't enjoy. How might really understanding and respecting that simple word, how might that change the dynamics in our own lives? Something to think about. All right, moving on to the next story. We're looking at a story that unfolded across a series of online updates. It's quite the journey.
It really is.
We're going to trace this one woman's path, navigating, well, the aftermath of an affair, parenthood, and this very persistent ex-partner.
It's definitely more than just one person's story, though, isn't it? It's a fascinating look at how these really complex relationship dynamics, and even legal battles can play out so publicly.
Right, in the open.
And we can see sort of what this whole saga tells us about human behavior, maybe decision-making, especially when things are shared so openly online, the ripple effects.
Exactly. So our mission today for this deep dive is really to unpack the key moments, the surprising twists, and that constant tension, between personal choice and all these external pressures. It's a really multi-layered narrative. You've sent us a whole stack of sources on this specific saga, so let's dive in and see what we find.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. We meet our original poster, OP we can call her. She's 26 years old.
Right.
And she had an affair with a 42-year-old married man. Now, what immediately jumps out is she found out he was married only a month into it.
Only a month.
Yeah, but the affair kept going for about a year, and then she got pregnant.
Wow. Okay, so that initial setup, I mean, it just shows how pursuing something, even secretly, can create this tangled web,
Yeah.
Dependencies, emotional fallout.
For everyone involved.
Exactly. And it lays the groundwork for years of conflict, really. So she tells him she's pregnant, and his reaction...
Push for an abortion, that's what the sources say.
Right. But she resisted.
Yeah.
She actually hid from him, had the baby, who was 2 years old when she first started posting about this.
Yeah. And a really significant choice she made back then was not naming him as the father.
No child support sought either initially. That's a big decision.
Huge. So the child is 2, the affair is long over, and then... Okay, get this. 6 months before her first post, the man's wife had divorced him. And then the ex-wife reaches out to the OP.
The ex-wife reaches out.
Yeah. Apparently wanting her kids, the ex-wife's kids, to know their new half-sibling.
That's unexpected. How did the ex-wife even find out about everything? About the child?
Well, the sources indicate she found out through messages, communications between her then husband and the OP.
Okay. The digital trail.
Exactly. And here's another twist. The ex-wife told the OP she wasn't the only other woman.
Oh, wow. So there were others.
At least one other affair before this one, apparently. But the existence of the child, that was reportedly the final straw for the divorce.
Makes sense. You can see how these things just cascade, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the couple involved. It affects the kids. The ex-wife's kids were apparently angry at their dad over the affair.
Yeah, a whole family system impacted.
Definitely.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. The ex-wife's kids know the divorce is final. And then the father of OP's son has some kind of accident.
An accident?
Yeah, something that apparently shook him up, and now he decides he wants to be involved.
Ugh. The classic catalyst moment.
Right. He sends a handwritten letter expressing regret, wanting to be a father, offering money, visitation.
And asking for a paternity test, presumably.
Yep, requested a paternity test, which raises that big question, why now? Why the sudden change?
The accident seems like the obvious trigger, doesn't it? A moment of reevaluation or something.
Seems like it. So the OP, she knew he was the father, obviously. She initially refused the test.
Okay.
But eventually agreed they should communicate through lawyers, which then led to a court-ordered paternity test.
Right. And that's a fundamental shift, isn't it? From this hidden affair, this secret child, to a legally recognized co-parenting situation.
Totally different ballgame.
Yeah, because once paternity is legally established, well, that parent has rights and responsibilities. It can get really complex.
And apparently the legal process wasn't fast enough for him.
Oh, what? How?
He actually showed up at her house, unannounced, because he didn't want to wait for the next court step.
Wow. Okay, that's concerning.
Yeah, she said it made her uncomfortable. She talked about having trouble trusting him, but also, knowing she'd have to figure out visitation and custody for her son.
That attempt to just bypass the lawyers, the court process, showing up like that,
Yeah.
it feels pretty significant.
Yeah, it does.
It really does. It kind of signals a potential pattern, maybe. Control, disregarding boundaries,
Yeah.
which it sounds like she was already struggling with.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So by July 2024, the son's 3 years old. Paternity is confirmed.
Okay.
And they start supervised visitations. He has to travel to her state for them.
Right. And child support.
That got settled too. Although, interestingly, she was hesitant to accept a large check he tried to give her.
Interesting. So this whole period, it's like the start of her having to deal with this boundary pushing, but now in a sort of official co-parenting context.
Exactly. So a few months go by. This is their new normal, right? And the OP admits she regrets the affair. She's working with her lawyer, making decisions for her son, understands she can't just block the father's access completely.
Right. the legal reality.
They're supposed to be using one of those parenting apps for communication.
Ah, yes. Common practice keeps things documented.
But guess what? He keeps contacting her outside the app,
Of course he does.
pushing for personal chats, even suggesting she and their son should visit him in his state. What do you make of that? Still trying to get around the rules.
Yeah, it's a really critical point in the story, I think. It strongly suggests he wants more than just co-parenting, right? He's trying to reestablish something personal.
Feels like it.
And she, wisely it seems, shut those attempts down. She even sent back that large check you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, she suspected he was trying to butter her up, and she worried she might, quote, fall for him all over again.
That shows a real internal struggle, doesn't it? Between those old feelings and her current resolve to protect herself, protect her son. It's tough to break away from those familiar dynamics, even unhealthy ones.
Definitely. So fast forward again to October 2024. He's still messaging outside the app, sending packages for their son.
Trying to seem thoughtful, perhaps?
Yeah, that's how she read it. But she described her biggest challenge as finding balance, like acknowledging maybe he is doing some good things now.
Right. Showing up for visits, paying support.
While still protecting her son from potential abandonment later on. And she mentioned he tried to bribe her with money again.
For what this time?
He wanted to change their son's last name to his.
The name change push?
Yeah, and she wasn't comfortable with it. What do these kinds of efforts signal, you think? The constant boundary pushing, the financial pressure, the name change thing?
Well, they can definitely be read as attempts to assert more control, maybe. To really solidify his place, not just legally as dad, but maybe back in her life too.
Right.
The name change thing especially often reflects something deeper, like wanting ownership or symbolically erasing the past somehow.
Her lawyer told her to document everything.
Smart move. Absolutely critical advice in these kinds of complex, high-conflict co-parenting situations, especially when one person keeps testing boundaries like that.
Okay, so now we jump to late 2024, early 2025. A positive development, it seems. The OP reveals she's dating someone new.
Oh, okay. Her first relationship since the whole affair situation.
Yep. And she describes this new guy as, like, totally different, age-appropriate, genuine.
Sounds promising.
A much healthier presence than her son's father, basically. She was upfront with him about her past. He seemed understanding. It really sounded like a good step for her.
It does, and the contrast there is pretty striking, isn't it? Between the new guy respecting boundaries, understanding her priorities, and the ex-father's controlling behavior. It sort of provides this clear benchmark of what a healthier dynamic could look like.
Totally. But then, a really concerning detail comes out.
What's that?
Her ex, the son's father, somehow found out she was dating.
Oh.
He made some comment during a visitation, claimed their son told him.
But the son's only like 3 or 4 at this point.
Exactly. She knew that was impossible. So she starts suspecting he's either spying on her directly or having someone else do it. This just ramps everything up, doesn't it? That feeling of being watched.
Absolutely. And didn't the sources say unsupervised visitation started around then, February 2025?
Yes, they did. Good point.
So that adds another layer of vulnerability for her, right? She mentioned worrying her son might feel abandoned during those visits, though apparently he seemed fine.
Yeah, and the online comments really picked up on the seriousness of him knowing she was dating. People were suggesting, maybe he planted recording devices or...
Oh, serious concern.
Telling her to hire a PI. It just speaks to those real-world fears about safety and privacy when you're dealing with someone potentially manipulative.
Especially in a co-parenting context, yeah?
So the situation feels really tense. And then April 2025... a really surprising and honestly, for a lot of readers, frustrating turn.
What happened?
The OP, well, she gave in to her ex.
Gave in how? Romantically?
Yeah. So the new healthy relationship ended. The guy got a job 2 hours away. She felt it was too far.
Okay, long distance challenges.
Right. And then she re-engaged with her ex. Outside the app again. Accepted gifts, apologies, and ultimately slept with him.
Wow. After all that effort to maintain boundaries.
In an Airbnb, apparently.
Wow.
On a washing machine was the detail she gave.
Okay, that's specific. This is where it gets incredibly complex emotionally, isn't it?
Totally.
I mean, despite all her previous resolve, she confessed she was still so attracted to him. Felt she hadn't felt that good with a man before or after him.
Yeah.
And she felt she was only resisting because she was supposed to. That really speaks to the power of that familiar, even as unhealthy dynamic, right?
Absolutely.
Especially maybe coming off the disappointment of the new relationship ending. It shows how hard it is to break those deep patterns, even when you know better, theoretically.
And the comments section.
Oh, I bet. Predictably huge frustration, concern. People seeing it as repeated bad decisions, predicting more negative stuff, like another pregnancy or him using it against her in a custody fight.
Yeah, make her look bad. That was the fear.
Exactly.
Okay, so after getting, as she put it, raked over the coals for that update,
Yeah, I can imagine.
it seems like maybe she had a moment of profound clarity.
How so?
By May 2025, the next update, she states very clearly she is not getting back together with her son's father. Full stop.
Okay, a reversal again.
He told him straight up, "You are here only to see our son. I'm not doing long distance. I'm not moving away from my family and my support system here."
Wow, setting some firm boundaries again.
Yeah.
That's a crucial development.
It feels like it.
It really suggests a renewed focus on protecting herself, protecting her son, a conscious step away from falling back into those old, damaging patterns. Maybe understanding her own needs better.
And what's really striking is his reaction this time.
Did he push back? Argue?
Nope. According to her, he didn't argue at all, just nodded and said, okay.
Huh. Silence.
Total silence afterwards. No follow-up text trying to convince her, no flowers, nothing, just quiet.
That's interesting after all the previous pushing.
And she admitted that the silence was actually harder to deal with than she expected.
How so?
She wanted, quote, proof that what we had meant something to him too. That it wasn't just about him chasing redemption or easing his guilt or, having control.
That need for validation, even from someone who hurt you. That's relatable, sadly. So what does his silence mean? Any theories?
Well, some commenters worried it wasn't genuine acceptance. Like maybe it's just a warm-up act for something else.
It's like a different kind of manipulation.
Or retaliation.
Yeah, potentially using their son as leverage. That distrust is still clearly there. And then he tells her he wants to bring his older son from his marriage to meet their son.
Introducing the siblings.
Which she worries could be another tactic, maybe to shut her out somehow or get back at her for rejecting him again.
So she's still vigilant, aware that even seemingly positive moves might have a hidden agenda with him.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
So where does that leave things now, as far as the sources go?
Well, she says she stands by her decision. His role is only as their son's father. She hopes he keeps showing up for the kid in that capacity.
Right.
But she's, and I quote, done waiting to see if he becomes the man I needed back then.
Powerful statement.
Yeah. And she's not going to romanticize being someone's second or third, fourth, fifth chance at figuring out how to love properly.
Wow. Okay. So a sense of resolution, maybe. Or at least acceptance of the reality of the situation.
It seems like it. This whole deep dive, I mean, it really shows how tangled personal history, legal stuff, emotional patterns can get, especially with a child in the middle.
Absolutely. It just underscores how incredibly hard it is to set and keep boundaries with someone who constantly tests them. And that internal battle, breaking free from those unhealthy cycles.
Yeah, it's not easy.
And it also highlights the weight of public opinion when you share online, right? That pressure to make the right choices, whatever those are perceived to be, even while you're wrestling with your own really complex feelings and desires. Ultimately, it's just a powerful reminder of how tricky it is to navigate your own autonomy when you're tied to someone through shared parenthood.
Especially with that kind of intense history still lingering.
Exactly.
So, as you listening reflect on this story, maybe consider this. How much does that desire for validation, whether it's from an ex or from strangers online, how much does that influence our really tough personal decisions?
Good question.
Especially when those decisions involve protecting the people we love most, like a child. And when it comes to breaking free from old patterns, when is enough, really enough to make lasting change stick?
Yeah, something to definitely mull over.
Definitely. Well, thanks for diving deep with us on this one. All right, moving on to the next story. Imagine you're still really grappling with the profound grief of losing your partner. It's been 2 years since they passed away suddenly. Then, completely out of the blue, a letter arrives. It's from a lawyer. And they're threatening to sue you for a huge sum of money, related to the home you own. That's pretty much the intense situation at the heart of our deep dive today. It's a story pulled from, those compelling corners of Reddit's Best of Redditor Updates community. Our main person, we'll call him OOP, for original poster, he gets hit with this legal threat from his deceased girlfriend's mother. And she's demanding, get this, $100,000 for what she claimed was her daughter's equity in his home.
Wow. Yeah, so our mission today really is to cut through all that emotional noise and the legal jargon that comes with a claim like this. We're going to explore the legal realities and, crucially, what steps you might be able to take to protect yourself, protect your loved ones from ever, facing something similar.
Okay, so let's start with the relationship itself, because that's really where the mother's claim sort of started. OOP and his girlfriend, they'd been together for 7 years, and for 5 of those years, she actually lived with him in his home. He'd bought the house about a year into their relationship. And here's, the absolutely critical detail. His name was the only name on the mortgage, and later, the only name on the deed. He was also the only one paying all the bills.
Right. That's usually very significant.
Totally. So the mother's core claim was that her daughter had somehow invested in the home. She said she paid for renovations, specifically, a bathroom and a bedroom. But OOP was completely clear. He paid for all of that himself. His girlfriend never paid him any rent. And that $100,000 figure, OP just said he had, and I quote, no idea where she could have even come up with it.
Just plucked out of thin air, seemingly.
Seems like it. Now, there is also this really crucial emotional layer here that kind of frames the mother's actions, doesn't it? The girlfriend passed away 2 years before this from natural causes. And her mother apparently had this history of being, vicious towards OOP. She even accused him of causing her daughter's death shortly after the funeral.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah, and it led to OOP cutting off all contact with her, understandably. But what's really striking is the contrast. The girlfriend's father and her siblings, they consistently supported OOP. They openly denounced the mother's actions. So it makes it clear this wasn't just, grief talking.
That context is important. And what's fascinating legally right from the start is that immediate red flag around the lawyer letter itself. The letter came from the mother's family attorney, and their specialty seemed to be wills and estate planning, maybe not property litigation specifically.
Okay, so maybe not the right kind of lawyer for this sort of fight?
Well, it raises an important question, doesn't it, for anyone who gets a letter like that?
Yeah.
What kind of legal weight does a demand letter actually carry? Especially if the lawyer might be a bit outside their usual field of expertise for that specific claim.
Right, so OP gets this letter from an actual attorney. What was his immediate reaction, and what was the most crucial advice he got right away?
Well, naturally, he was spooked. I mean, who wouldn't be? But his immediate action, and this turned out to be absolutely critical for how quickly it all resolved, was to get his own legal advice.
Good move.
Essential move. And that advice quickly zeroed in on the basic legal facts. The first, the biggest takeaway. The deed is king. His girlfriend was never, ever on the deed to the house.
That seems so fundamental, just having your name on the paper.
It is. It's the foundation of property ownership. But, people sometimes hope emotions or contributions might override it.
So beyond the deed itself, did his legal team look into those alleged financial contributions? Since that was the mother's main argument.
Oh, absolutely they did, because that's the next logical step. But the legal reality is, without being on the deed or maybe having some kind of clear written agreement about ownership, her estate just had no legal claim to equity in OOP's home.
Okay, so her estate couldn't claim it through probate court.
Exactly. Let me just clarify that for you listening. Probate court deals with the deceased person's estate, right? Distributing assets based on a will or state law. It simply cannot award assets the person didn't legally or equitably own when they died. Since the house wasn't legally part of the girlfriend's estate, the mother couldn't get it that way.
So where could she make such a claim then, if not probate?
She would have had to file a separate civil lawsuit. And even there, she'd need to prove some kind of financial interest, maybe based on complex ideas like unjust enrichment.
Meaning OOP unfairly benefited.
Yeah, the idea that he unfairly benefited at the girlfriend's expense. Or maybe a constructive trust, where a court sort of implies ownership to prevent a perceived injustice.
Yeah.
But honestly, these are really high bars to clear, especially without clear supporting evidence, because essentially you're asking a court to ignore the formal documents, like the deed.
And did they find any evidence of her contributing?
Well, this is interesting. OOP's lawyers, they didn't just take his word for it. They actually dug into digital payment transfers, Cash App, Venmo, that sort of thing. And guess what they found?
What?
OOP had actually sent more money to his girlfriend over the years than she had sent to him.
Wow. So the complete opposite of the mother's claim.
Exactly. It totally undercut any argument that she'd been financially investing in the property.
Okay, and you mentioned documents. We also learned the girlfriend did have a will. How did that play into things?
Right. She did have a will. And it's important context. Her will apparently left everything to her parents. Now, on one hand, that means OOP wasn't a beneficiary, so he wasn't getting anything from her estate. But critically, it also reinforced the fact that the house wasn't in her estate to begin with, so it wasn't something she could have legally willed away from OOP, even if she'd wanted to. It wasn't hers to give.
Makes sense. And inevitably in stories like this, someone always brings up common law marriage. Was that even relevant here?
Yeah, that's a really common question and often a big misconception. The state where this happened, Florida, it does not recognize common law marriage, full stop.
Okay.
Now, a few U.S. states do still recognize it, but even there, they usually have very specific requirements. Things like publicly presenting themselves as married, holding themselves out to the community as husband and wife, which clearly didn't apply to OOP's situation with his girlfriend.
So another dead end for the mother's potential claims.
Pretty much. And it's quite different from how things work in some other places,
Yeah.
Like in New Zealand or the UK, they have concepts around de facto relationships where significant contributions to a shared home can sometimes create a claim, even without marriage. So this case really highlights how different legal systems treat these situations, and it just hammers home why having clear documentation, knowing whose name is on what, is so crucial for your own peace of mind.
Absolutely. It's actually kind of chilling to think how easily this could have become a nightmare for OOP if he hadn't had that clear paperwork, you know, and if he hadn't acted so quickly. So let's talk about how it actually resolved.
Yeah, his proactive steps were key. It led to a surprisingly, almost anticlimactically swift resolution. He didn't just talk to one lawyer, he actually consulted with 3 different ones. 2 gave him free consultations, and 1 he paid for a consult. And all 3 told him the exact same thing. The mother had absolutely no case. 0 legal standing.
That must have been reassuring.
Hugely. And the lawyer he paid. That attorney even offered to write a formal legal response letter back to the mother's lawyer. And get this, he offered to do that initial letter at no additional cost beyond the consultation fee.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, basically saying, look, this is baseless, here's why. With the understanding, of course, that if it somehow escalated to an actual lawsuit, then OOP would pay for further services.
So what happened when they sent that letter? Was there a big fight?
Not at all. It was remarkably decisive. OOP's attorney sent the response letter laying out the facts, the deed, the lack of contributions, etc. And the very next day, the mother's attorney responded, sent a letter back saying she would not be pursuing the matter any further, and that they considered the issue closed. Done.
Wow, just like that. One day.
Just like that. A really swift and happy ending for OOP, considering the initial shock and the amount of money involved.
That really tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does. If we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this whole situation highlights how demand letters from lawyers, while scary, can sometimes be more of a pressure tactic, a shot across the bow. Not necessarily a sign of a genuinely strong legal case.
Especially if the facts aren't there to back it up.
Exactly. A good ethical lawyer is going to advise their client on the actual realities of their situation. I mean, ethics rules generally prevent lawyers from pushing forward with claims or evidence they know to be false or completely baseless. So it's very possible the mother's attorney, once presented with the clear facts from OP's lawyer, the deed, the payment records quickly realized, yeah, we've got nothing here, and advised the mother to drop it.
It also makes you think about the family dynamics again.
It does. It's a really stark reminder, sadly, that even in times of deep grief, sometimes these underlying family issues, maybe even greed, can unfortunately surface. Remember, the girlfriend's own father and siblings had denounced the mother's behavior towards OOP before this legal threat. It suggests this wasn't just, grief doing crazy things, but maybe part of a pattern, unfortunately.
Right. So let's bring this back to you, the listener. What's the ultimate takeaway? What's the lesson from OOP's whole ordeal? I mean, for me, this deep dive really underscores how absolutely ironclad documented ownership like OOP, having his name solely on that deed, can be like an instant shield. It protects you against even these really aggressive, emotionally charged legal threats.
It really does. It's about knowing where your potential legal vulnerabilities might be and how sometimes simple steps can just eliminate them.
Especially, it seems, for unmarried couples living together.
Yes, that's a huge area where clarity is needed. Things like ensuring you both understand who is actually on the deed. Having up-to-date wills is also critical.
And I've heard about things like a no contest clause in a will. Could that help?
Sometimes, yeah. A no contest clause basically says if a beneficiary challenges the will and loses, they might forfeit their inheritance. It can discourage frivolous challenges.
Okay.
But Overall, OP's story just shows the immense power of getting proper, qualified legal advice when you're faced with something intimidating like that lawyer letter. Don't just panic.
Yeah, don't let the fear paralyze you. Get advice.
Precisely. This case starkly illustrates how just the clarity of facts, the simple truth of who owned the house, can cut right through attempts to weaponize grief or, frankly, greed. And it really challenges us to think, doesn't it? How much preventable distress, how much financial strain do people endure just because they lack a basic understanding of their legal standing? Especially when it comes to big things like property and relationships after someone passes away.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. And it leads to the final question for you listening. What can you do, maybe even right now, to make sure your own personal relationships, your property, your wishes are all crystal clear and legally protected?
Yeah.
How can you set things up to spare your own loved ones from having to fight these kinds of painful battles after you're gone?
Powerful questions indeed. Definitely something for all of us to ponder. Until next time on The Deep Dive, stay well informed and keep asking those deep questions.